$100,000. That's the number where your money starts making more progress than you do. And I know how that sounds. Like one of those arbitrary milestones people throw around to sell you a course. You've probably felt this. You save for months, you finally hit five figures, and it feels like nothing happened. The number went up, sure, but your life didn't change. You're still checking prices at the grocery store, still doing the mental math before you book a flight. So when people say the first $100,000 is the hardest, it's tempting to roll your eyes. Hardest compared to what? It still feels impossible right now. Here's the part nobody explains properly. Financial advisors love repeating that line, but most say it like motivational poster material, not math. It's not a vibe. It's an actual inflection point in how compounding behaves, and once you see the mechanics, you'll never look at your savings rate the same way again. There's a quieter reason it stays unexplained too. A vague line keeps you coming back for advice, while the actual math lets you figure it out yourself in 5 minutes. Most people try to fix this the wrong way. Take Mike. 26, decent job, convinced the answer is a side hustle. So he spends a year flipping sneakers online, nets maybe 3 grand after expenses, and burns out by month 10. The math was never going to move the needle. Then there's guys like Tom who think the answer is finding the one stock that 10 times. He puts a chunk of savings into whatever's trending, watches it swing 40% in a month, and either panics out at a loss or gets lucky once and assumes he's figured out investing. He hasn't. He's just gambling with extra steps. And then there's the budgeting app obsessives. Cutting out coffee, tracking every dollar down to the cent. It helps. It's just not the lever they think it is. At low balances, your effort is doing almost all of the work. The market is doing almost none. None of these guys are lazy. They're just applying effort to the wrong stage of the problem. The actual answer isn't a side hustle, a hot stock, or a stricter budget. It's volume. It's getting enough capital into the system that compounding stops being theoretical and starts being your most productive employee. One that works 24 hours a day and never asks for a raise. Think of it like pushing a boulder up a hill. For a long time, you're the only thing moving it. Every inch comes from your effort, your sweat, your paycheck. But at a certain point, the hill starts to curve downward and the boulder begins moving on its own momentum. You're not pushing anymore. You're just steering, and steering takes a completely different skill set than pushing ever did. This is what I call the 3 phases of money. Phase 1 is the push phase, under $50,000, where 100% of your growth comes from what you personally put in. Phase 2 is the shift phase, from $50,000 to $100,000, where your returns start whispering instead of staying silent. Phase 3 is the momentum phase, past $100,000, where the market starts doing real, visible work alongside you, and for the first time, your money is officially on payroll. Most people quit somewhere in phase 1, right before it would have started getting easier. Let's make this real. At $10,000, a 7% return hands you $700 a year. That's a nice dinner. At $100,000, that same 7% hands you $7,000 without you lifting a finger. A car payment? Gone. And here's the part that should sting. Every year you delay reaching that number isn't just a year of missing growth. It's growth on growth you'll never get back. Jake, 34, waited 5 extra years to start investing seriously. By the time he reached $100,000, the version of him who started on time was already sitting on close to $40,000 more. Money he never collected. For a delay he barely noticed. But here's where it gets interesting. Hitting $100,000 isn't the finish line. It's the moment the rules change. Once you're in the momentum phase, your job shifts from grind harder to don't get in the way. The biggest threat to your money isn't a recession anymore. It's you, panic selling, chasing a hot tip, or pulling money out the 1 year it needed to sit still. The skill that built your first $100,000 is discipline. The skill that protects the next $400,000 is patience. So when someone tells you the first $100,000 is the hardest, they're not exaggerating to make you feel better. They're describing the exact point where your money stops needing you to carry it and starts carrying you instead. If you're still in the push phase, that's not a bad place to be. It's just a part of the hill before the curve. And if you're wondering what actually changes in your mindset once the money starts moving on its own, that's a different kind of shift, and it's worth talking about next.